Hello, my name is Cindy Bolero, and I am with Dining for Women. I've been a member of Dining for Women for several years now, and I am very happy to be conducting this interview today with Executive Director Travis Ning of Starfish One by One, which is the organization that Dining for Women will be supporting this month. So, Travis, welcome, and thank you for agreeing to be on our video interview with us. And tell me a
Thank
little
you for
bit
having me.
about your affiliation with Starfish One by One organization.
Okay, well, Starfish One by One was founded in 2007, and I joined about 2 years ago, but I've known about it since its inception, as it was founded by my parents. And Starfish One by One was born out of a very different, but at the same time somewhat similar experience here in Guatemala, and that's Friendship Bridge. My parents founded Friendship Bridge, which is a large microcredit organization focusing exclusively on women. And what we learned through that experience was that women can be and absolutely are the key agent of change in
Yes.
international development. And what we're looking to explore with Starfish One by One is the idea of what if we get to these women and empower them before they're trapped in cycles of poverty and illiteracy.
Right. Wonderful. Well, that's great to know that it's a family run business then.
Indeed, it is.
So tell me a little bit more about Starfish One by One's mission, and also how does that connect with the UN Millennium Goal of achieving universal education?
So, Starfish One by One empowers young women here in Guatemala, which is where I am now. And sorry if there's any background noise; it happens to be a bit of a noisy place sometimes. Through education and mentorship to become leaders in their community. And so we're predicated entirely on the girl effect, which is obviously the magic formula of educating young women as the key and most cost-effective, benevolent way of inducing positive change in these communities. So specifically, we're looking at access to universal education as our primary Millennium Development Goal. But the beauty of the girl effect is that umbrella, and that beneath that, you can address so many other issues, that being gender equity, maternal health, environmentalism. We realize that the most qualified person in these communities where we're working is often that adolescent girl. So through her, through empowering and educating her, we absolutely expect to have profound change in these communities.
That's wonderful. So tell me more about the specific programs that DFW will be helping to fund.
So Dining for Women has very generously opted to support a really exciting development in our program, which is called the Bridge Program. In Guatemala, girls, primarily indigenous rural girls, which actually represent a significant part of the population, very few ever get to secondary schooling. So only 5% of indigenous adolescent girls finish primary school. So you're talking about, if you think about the number of high school graduates is minuscule and actually not really even measurable. So what we're trying to do is secure the secondary school education for that population. And with the Dining for Women support, we're actually able to launch this Bridge program, which is for 10th to 12th grade girls, all of whom have been with our program for the 3 years of their middle schooling. And what we're going to provide each is partial academic scholarships to get them in the door of the school building. Then it's weekly mentorship and weekly peer support groups, because as we find that population, typically when they turn age 12, here in Guatemala, it's a population that, as opposed to boys, a young woman disappears from the social sphere. A boy gets more social access and more access to the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
whereas a girl who enters puberty at that age and becomes increasingly more valuable in terms of her domestic burden,
Mm-hmm.
disappears. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're trying to right that ship and make them parallel lines. And we do that primarily through weekly mentorship, the partial scholarship, and in the case of the Bridge program, we're wanting to make sure that these young women, once they're empowered, having a vision for themselves, seeing something different on the horizon, that they actually have that bridge to get to that destination. So what that entails is a very intensive level of job preparation, of really making informed decisions, of the idea of laying out a life plan for yourself, of a long, medium, and short-term goal system,
Right.
um, and really just exposing them to that world beyond their community, because all of them are being raised by parents who, their mothers have been to school for less than a year on average,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them are agriculturally based. So a girl honestly has no idea. She has no access to that information. Whereas I know in the U.S., I remember in my high school years just constantly getting tapped on the shoulder, whether it was my parents or whether it was the guidance counselor, everyone asking me about what was next. And
Right.
that
What are you going to do when you grow up? Yeah.
Exactly. And what about the SATs? And what
Right.
about this? You need to be thinking about this if you want to do that. And and we realize that there's a huge vacuum of that type of guidance here in this population among these young women. So we need to fill that void through personalized mentorship and really just accompanying her gradually through 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. 10th grade just being, let's go look at a university. You say you want to be a doctor, let's go look at a hospital. And then 11th
Mhm.
grade, okay, you still want to be a doctor, let's go shadow a doctor for a bit.
Mhm.
And finally, high school, ideally, let's go intern we're going to make you an intern at the hospital. And in the meantime, signing up looking at that scholarship program that takes you to medical school to make sure it's all lined up and there's a plan A and a B and a C so that these girls are totally capable of taking that next step beyond high school.
Right. So, can you tell me, do you have what NGOs will you be working with to match up with the internships? Do you have that piece of it together yet?
Right now, we're looking at. It's funny because I thought it would be a bit of a hard sell, but actually, they're calling me, which is fantastic, and calling our country director here.
Mhm.
We're very fortunate that where we are in Guatemala, for those of you who are familiar with Guatemala, it's around Lake Atitlan, which is this amazingly stunning place where a lot of organizations have their either a branch office or are actually implementing programs here. So it's actually more NGOs than we have students right now. And I think all of them absolutely click with that idea, the objective of this, of really giving a girl her first opportunity. And in our experience here, we've had a few of our own girls intern in our project, and it's clearly been the fastest, most marked way to give her the access to those skills to understand what it's like to work in an office and what are the basic rules of an office and
Right.
how does it operate. I mean, the etiquette of an office alone is enough, but also the opportunity to really have her feel what it is to be a part of something in her community that's enacting positive change. So we've had libraries, community libraries talking to us. There's microcredit organizations that are talking to us. A lot of school building programs that are looking for keys to these communities where they would know which communities need schools.
Right.
Um, let's see, we've got a lot of cooperatives, women's cooperatives that are looking for our interns who can sort of be that on the sales part
Mhm.
of how to market things. And we're just trying to make sure that link between her interests and the need of the organization is a good fit.
Right. It just seems like such a win-win for everybody. I mean, I myself have worked in nonprofits for my entire career, and I am always wanting interns. And the nonprofit that I've worked for have never been able to afford to pay for them. So, I mean, this is wonderful that you're going to be having an intern that alone they get so much out of that, but then they're being able to be paid for that. The organization gets another person to help them with what they're doing. I mean, it just really is a fascinating sounds like a fascinating program.
We're really excited, and that I think that what you touched on a very interesting part of the whole formula, and that these organizations that are going to be taking these interns on typically couldn't afford the interns. So the Dining for Women support is patching that hole. So Dining for Women through Starfish One by One is supporting perhaps 70 to 80% of this after-school job, while the other organization puts in 15 to 20% around there. So they have a little bit of skin in the game to make sure that it's a real
Right.
experience, but at the same time, it's absolutely affordable to them, and I think that's another big reason that they're able to be contacting us and looking for interns.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about the daily living conditions in the area of Guatemala that you're working.
I mean, for anyone who's ever been here, it's always I mean, it's a stunning place in good and bad ways. Specifically to the cause that we're all about, which is young women's empowerment. And I touched on it earlier. In Latin America, Guatemala ranks bottom at the very last place in terms of gender equity. So here, obviously, a girl doesn't get a fair shake, and like I mentioned before, especially at that age 12, which is when you're finishing sixth grade, as a young woman here, the double burden, which is the cost of your schooling plus your lost labor in the home, is so significant that most families just they have no educational experience to see the beauty of the intervention
Mm-hmm.
of education, and so they the girl just tends to disappear and reemerges a few years later as an unfortunately a pregnant very young mother, and
Right.
then the cycle continues of exclusion. So um, and it's reflected in the low levels of literacy, the incredibly high child infant mortality rates here. And as anyone knows, the nutrition levels here in Guatemala are among the worst in the world, even though it's a country with so many natural resources.
Right, right. And I believe that you had done some interviews with some of the girls that you've been helping. Is that correct? So I'll just
We did we did prepare a short video of the interviews that we did with the girls who are in the program now in this bridge program.
Okay, great. So I'll just sort of direct everyone to look for that on the Dining for Women site, where
Hmm.
you can go and see some short videos of women who are actually participating in the program, because I know how that's always very impactful for me
Far more
to.
interesting than looking at me. Yeah.
Uh, and so let's just close by, let me ask you, what do you think is the most important thing for us Dining for Women members to know?
Well, I think it's obviously a very thorough vetting process, and again, I'm very honored that Starfish One by One is able to benefit from what is such a beautiful and massive organization. If I could say anything more, it would be the idea of, and a thank you for investing in quality over quantity. I know a lot of organizations promise macro change, but we're based entirely on macro change through a profoundly deep experience of a few that will lead
Mhm.
others to this massive change. Um, the other part that I'd like to touch on is the fact that it's always a little bit gooier, but often limited access to education is more than just a financial issue. So the social, familial, and structural issues that are keeping these girls out of school is harder to address, but absolutely worthy. And again, thank you for investing in that, and also that the critical nature of local staff. I think it's
Mhm.
important that, I mean, obviously, I don't have a lot of experience being an adolescent Mayan girl, but certainly my staff here absolutely does, and they've all walked that path.
Mhm.
Who am I to be at all qualified to design a program benefiting a population that I myself don't know much about? So I think those are, to me, the three key elements that we're trying to always maintain here in Starfish. And of course, I encourage Dining for Women to always keep your eye out for those key elements as you look forward and supporting other projects.
Great. Thank you so much, Travis. It's been wonderful speaking with you. We are honored, really, to be supporting your organization, and we will look forward to seeing the reports after the fact and to hearing the great success stories that you all, I'm sure, will be bringing to us. Thank you so much.
Uh, Thank you very much, everyone.